Hi, and welcome to Michigan Matters. The Great Lakes Water Authority is a utility overseeing water and wastewater for over 4 million people across southeast Michigan. The utility CEO and CFO are here to give us an update on how things are going and how it might affect you and your community. Then, it's a look at our state's growing defense industry and military vehicles with Michigan ties as we talk with 3 leaders at the forefront. It's a show about keeping our water safe and our nation too. Let's get started.
From CBS Detroit, this is Michigan Matters with Carol Kane. Michigan Matters is brought to you in part by Henry Ford Health.
We're joined by 2 people you may not be familiar with, but many of you count on as we say hello to Sue Coffey, who's the CEO of the Great Lakes Water Authority, and her COO, Bill Wolfson. I'm so glad to have you guys finally with us in studio. We've been talking about this for months, it seems like, and every time we're going to do it, a massive weather issue and flooding happens, and we haven't been able to do it. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So, Sue, I call it GLWA. Some people call it Great Lakes Water Authority. Some are GLWA. The bottom line, it's about water and wastewater. So when was GLWA formed, and what's the service that you provide?
So the formation happened in 2014, 15, 16. We stood up operationally, took operational responsibility January 1st, 2016. So we're just about to our 10-year mark here on operations. And what we do is both drinking water and wastewater. We're a wholesaler, meaning our customers are communities. So we provide water, drinking water services. We transmit it out to the communities. They pick it up at their boundaries and they serve it to their people. Same thing on the wastewater side. The local communities pick up the wastewater, say, out in the streets, and they convey it down to us. We pick it up, large diameter pipes. So we have treatment works on both the drinking water side and the wastewater side.
And Bill, most viewers utilizing your services may or may not know you're the actual ones providing this, but also the numbers and how far flung. It's over 4 million people, which that's almost half the state's population, right?
Yeah, we are one of the largest water utilities in the country. On the drinking water side, we serve 3.9 million people. That's about 40% of Michigan's population. And we serve customers in Monroe, Wayne, Washtenaw, Macomb, Oakland, St. Clair, Genesee, and Lapeer counties. On the wastewater side, our footprint is slightly smaller. We serve Wayne, Oakland, and Macomb, 2.7 million people, about 30% of Michigan's population. So we're one of the largest utilities in the country. On any given day, we can pump 1.7 billion gallons of water and treat 1.7 billion gallons of wastewater. Our water resources recovery facility is the largest single-site wastewater facility in the country.
And Sue, you and what you are doing here, we don't usually hear about you folks until there's flooding, until there's boil water advisories, and suddenly the Great Lakes Water Authority's name comes up here. So I guess the question is to you, in a quick summary, your assessment of regional water and water sewerage conditions right now.
So I think the assessment would be good for the services that we provide. In terms of the asset condition, I would say not as good, right? For years we've been hearing about grades like D's or E's from the American Society of Civil Engineers on asset conditions. So one of the things GLWA has done is we spend a lot of time doing condition assessments and improving assets. But I would say not just with GLWA, but with all the water utilities.
Yeah.
But there's a gap in funding, and so we are at a point where the assets are really deteriorating faster than we're able to
Well, and how old are they, too?
So some of them are 100 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And Bill, the Great Lakes Water Authority Board recently approved a 5.9% increase in water rates and 4.5% increase for sewer rates, if I read it correctly here. Why is that necessary?
That's really necessary for the deferred infrastructure. So over the last 9 years, our average water increase has been 1.6%, and our average wastewater increase has been 1.6 and water 2.7. But what we found is that during COVID, we absorbed all that inflation and all that. So the problem is, while the system right now looks to be in good condition, we're about 20 years out from a cliff.
Yeah.
And that's very frightening when you consider that many of our capital projects take a decade from start to finish.
Yeah, we're talking obviously millions and billions of dollars here at this stage of this. Sue, I know you recently spoke at a conference about challenges, and how is climate change factoring into this, real quickly?
So I would tell you on the wastewater side and the water side is very different, but on the wastewater side we are seeing more and more intense rain events. And we all experience it. We can feel it. We can see it. We understand it. But what it does to the systems were designed to handle a certain flow. And these storms are delivering, flow way in excess of what the system was designed for. So it's creating a situation where we have to be ready at any time for an emergency.
And just real quickly here, Bill, before we go to break, I know you have continued to receive top rating from agencies, AAA bond ratings and so forth for projects that you need to do. But it seems like in Lansing that message isn't necessarily going as you've gone up there to try to reach out for monies here. But why aren't they getting the message?
I think it's because it's hard for someone to understand that a problem that is likely to reach its full magnitude 20 years out is a problem today. And I also think we tend to look at immediate crises when we're funding, and that when a system is well managed, we don't necessarily put our resources to that. So we're not being proactive. We're not saving for our retirement, to use an analogy.
And we're going to continue. I want to talk more about that because that's a big part of what we're here to talk about and talk about avoiding potential issues like this. Anyways, we're going to take a break. Be back with more Michigan Matters after this. And welcome back to Michigan Matters. We're joined by the leadership of Great Lakes Water Authority, CEO Sue Coffey and CFO Bill Wolfson. And Bill, let's talk a little bit about monies in Lansing and trying to get monies to do some of these projects that you're talking about here and fixing and repairing. For second budget cycle, the House is in political gridlock of getting anything done at this stage of the game. As we know, we keep hearing about this. You have an ask in front of the legislature for $25 million, assuming the budget deal gets done and the request that you're asking for gets done. What specifically is that $25 million for?
So that's $10 million to be used on the wastewater side for flood mitigation, and $15 million to be used on water for system improvements. And I want to be clear, it's not a one-time ask. We're really looking for continual funding so we can mitigate that. Unlike so many other things, the only way that we raise revenue from water is through the residents of this state. And that's very challenging, as you might imagine. So we have that request. It would really allow us to focus on system resiliency. It would allow us to continue affordability. So for utilities, affordability is really long-term. Is a system designed to meet current and future needs?
And Sue, I know one of the Whitmer's administration's priorities is infrastructure funding for the roads. Now, I know one of your thoughts is to educate the powers that be up there that water infrastructure should be rolled into that. How are you making the case on that?
So I think the best, easiest way to talk about it is the fact that these roads are old and they need to be replaced, and that's certainly a priority. The pipes, many of which are under the roads, equally old or older. So if we're doing roads and there are pipes under those roads that are half their useful life or longer, which many of them are, right, they should be included in the road replacement project and the funding for that, so that they can be replaced at the same time. Currently they're not. That's not part of that funding. The funding's for the road itself, but it would make sense if that could work together. And it's certainly, we see the roads, we can feel the bumps in the roads, we can understand the condition of the roads, but people don't see the condition of the assets that are under the roads, like the pipes, and those are equally bad.
Until they break, and then we major flooding, and then all kinds of calamity here. And I guess, Bill, I know you spent a lot of time too up in Lansing talking with folks about this issue. It affects so many people, nearly half the state, and when leadership there is trying to show bipartisanship, this is not a political issue. I mean, everybody's affected by this. When these roads go out, I mean, you have flooding here and these problems that cause so much. It would seem to be something that it wouldn't be that difficult to sell. But am I wrong on that?
It seems to us like it should be fairly easy. We've tried to be creative in the solutions. Again, I can only say that I realize there are many short-term priorities, But if we don't focus on the long term, it's become a crisis, and we'd rather get to the issues before it's too late.
So I suppose some way to deal with this is just go back and forth. I mean, this is not just a Whitmer administration thing. It's been this way from administration after administration. This is not new, and you don't need me to tell you that here. But let's talk about revenue streams for these types of projects. One thing, liquor sales. The state gets monies from that, and is that possible to do something like they did with the lottery and education, where they're getting $10 million, taking something from liquor sales, say, for example, and putting that towards infrastructure? Is that the kind of thing you're looking at?
Or a charge on disposable water bottles that we see littering our highways and streets. Make a return just as we do for other types of liquids. Those are things I think that are creative solutions, and they're big solutions. But as you point out, this isn't a Democratic issue. This isn't a Republican issue. It's a nonpartisan issue. The pipes don't know who's in power. They just know that they've got to be addressed.
I know that Governor Whitmer is supportive of the Great Lakes Water Authority and getting funding assistance. I'm not sure Speaker Hall, in fact, he's going to be on our show sometime coming up here. I'm not sure if either of you had a chance to talk with him about this and where he stands.
We've not had a chance to have that direct conversation, but we certainly would look forward to that opportunity.
Okay. And what about other types of funding for this type of thing? Federal funding? I mean, are there federal funds or grants available for this kind of thing?
There are, but they're few and far between, and they don't seem like they're getting any more robust these days. But when Bill talked about systematic funding, recurring funding for this, that is exactly what we need, like other infrastructure gets. Federal funding. One of the things I think people don't think about that much is the fact that most of these systems were built with federal dollars once upon a time, and the replacement or renewals of them is now entirely on the backs of the people who are paying the bills. So we are looking for that kind of assistance from the federal government and state government as well. But across the country, the utilities need some sort of structural, recurring, regular cadence of investment into this water industry.
And the problem is our main source to do that are loan programs. And so for the families in southeastern Michigan, that just means you're really deferring or spreading the cost out, but you're still absorbing that. And that's one of the things that we've really got to look is how do we do this for grants? We spend far more, about 10 times as much on roads in this country as we do on water. And water, because it's out of sight, it's often out of mind.
Until we have a problem. And
Until we
that's
have
we
a
start
problem.
hearing about you. Well, all right, we're not going to solve this here, but I want to thank you guys so much for being here. Have you back to talk about it, because this is obviously a critical issue. I mean, literally, you're talking about half the state in the water and sewage and everything else here. So we'll have you back later. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And keep it right here. We're going to be back with the roundtable right after this. And welcome back to the Roundtable, where we're going to be talking about the growing defense industry in Michigan as we say hello to three folks at the forefront. Ian Payne, who is CEO of Rank America, Tracy Webb, Director of Business Development and Marketing at GS Engineering, and Eric Patton, Deputy Chair of Ground Vehicle Systems Engineering and Technology Symposium and GVETS, or also additionally Aries Technology, where he's the president, which just held an event, a big event here in Metro Detroit here, 10 by thousands from across the globe. So thank you so much for stopping by.
Thanks for having us, Carol.
Appreciate that. We're going to get into all this. So, Ian, let me start with you. We've been hearing so much recently about Michigan, the defense industry, our penchant for innovation. We know Michigan is arsenal democracy and so forth. Tell me, where does all of that come from, do you think, this defense sector and the fact that we're focusing it here? Why do you think it still is evolving here?
Well, of course, there's a huge and well-known global arsenal of democracy presence as a legacy from the 1940s, but was renewed very much in the 50s and 60s. And it ties into the automotive strength that Detroit has. But Michigan itself is much wider than just the Detroit corridor. There's a kind of wider presence around the whole state and a lot of expertise and talent.
And Rank and a thumbprint, what does it do?
So Rank is a provider of mobility. We provide transmissions, engines and suspension to the U.S. Army's primary combat vehicles and to allies around the world.
And Tracy, same question to you. What does GS Engineering do?
GS Engineering is a defense engineering company and product development company located in Michigan's Keweenaw Peninsula. So we're about 9 hours north of here, where there's a small but mighty growing defense corridor, some niche defense companies located up there. We support all of the prime OEM contractors on development of their vehicles, as well as the government directly on product development.
And as mentioned, Eric, you're also a board member of NDIA Michigan chapter, and you're deputy chair of the GVSET conference going on this past week here. The event, which was here in Southeast Michigan at Suburban Showplace, I think it was, what was its purpose and why hold it in Metro Detroit?
So GVSET is the largest event of its kind, focused entirely on ground vehicle modernization. We hold it in Detroit because, as Ian said, the arsenal of democracy was here. It's still here. We have the Detroit Arsenal, which manages all the vehicle development for the Army, the production, and the maintenance of them as well. GVSETs and NDI Michigan were created in order to facilitate communication between industry, like my friends here, and the government. We remove friction. We try to get better cooperation because at the end of the day, it's a partnership and we need both sides working together.
So if I were to say it's a conduit to try to bring it all together.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And Eric, what your company, what does it do in terms of the Army? What kinds of things is it doing? Can you give me an example, like of a vehicle, things that you'd be doing with it?
Okay, so I'll take that first, and I know the others are deeply involved as well. But so RENC is providing transmissions on the Bradley infantry fighting vehicle, so that's protecting and carrying our troops into battle and bringing them back home safely. The howitzer that the U.S. Army uses, the Paladin, the multi-launch rocket system, and the newest modular multi-purpose vehicle. Those all have products from RENC in them.
And when you mentioned the defense corridor, tell me a little bit more about that. What's the expanse of it here in Michigan?
So the expanse of it here in Michigan is located primarily between Mound Road and Van Dyke, and there's the location in Sterling Heights and Warren, Michigan. But there are a number of companies in the Grand Rapids area, Western Michigan, and little known, the Army used to have a cold regions research lab up in Calumet, Michigan, which Michigan Tech bought and has spawned a bunch of companies based on there.
Yeah. Do you think our region's doing enough to try to capitalize on this in terms of bringing business, educators, the Army, the military, everything? Are we doing enough, do you think, to bring it all together?
So personally, I think we can always do more. We have a thriving ecosystem here. The state is doing a lot to try to bring new defense investment, largely focused on naval and air, and I want to make sure that all the folks that have been here that continue to support, we continue to bolster companies that are providing jobs to our citizens.
Well, we do seem to hear a lot about, for example, Selfridge, which the president was here, more jets coming to the area, that brings work and it kind of proliferates, right?
Absolutely, yeah. But we have several hundred employees between these companies alone, as well as all the others in Michigan. Yeah. So let's make sure we continue to support them.
And if I may, Eric, I think that there's definitely an ecosystem here. So we, as a larger business, we have about 700 employees in Michigan, but our supply chain spend is about 60% of everything we spend. We're putting $50 million back into the Michigan economy in things that we're buying from smaller businesses, and that interaction helps us kind of foster the innovation that you see in companies like GS Engineering. Mm-hmm.
And I think supported by the state of Michigan, the MADC and their new Office of Defense and Aerospace Innovation is doing a lot to bring companies together to make sure that we're having important dialogues that partner with the OEMs to ultimately bring warfighters what they need.
And I know there's a lot more to say, but you know what? We need to take a quick break here, pay a few bills. We'll be back with more Michigan Matters and the Roundtable after this. Welcome back. We're talking with Ian Payne of Rank America, Tracy Webb of GS Engineering, and Eric Patton of NDIA Board, and also Aries, where he's president, and many other positions that he has here. Growing number here. So Ian, let me start with you here. The defense industry is big in Michigan. How does, and you have the global perspective, you just moved here in...
I did, absolutely. Came to Michigan in February, bought a house and a truck, and I'm settling in as fast as I can.
So when you look at the defense industry, how are we set here, do you think?
Very strong. I mean, the U.S. defense industry is globally respected, and Michigan's well known as a powerhouse of that. I think the global defense position is growing. Allies in Europe and the Pacific area are standing up to future challenges, and everybody's increasing their posture to be ready to defend themselves against the kind of turbulent world, I would say, and the U.S. is a huge part of that.
Well, as a follow-up to that, Eric, Donald Trump announced a major increase in defense spending in his latest budget, topping $1 trillion for fiscal 2026. How much of that do you think it possibly had our way?
So with all the ground vehicles managed out of Michigan, we will certainly get a sizable chunk of that. You know, a large portion of it is going naval and air, so those are important to look at as well. But I think the really key thing to remember is that this has a one-time plus up of about $100 million. So we need to make sure that we leverage that extra money appropriately, make the investments we can make to leverage the future better.
And quick thoughts about our political leadership, Michigan's political leadership, Congress, Senate, with the defense in bringing back, when we know we have Gary Peters retiring, others, a lot of new people there. Is that going to make it more difficult?
Yeah, certainly. You know, Gary Peters stepping down means we have somebody coming out of appropriations and off the Senate Armed Service Committee. The thing I'd say is we need to have our congressional delegation look at getting on the defense subcommittees, whether it's appropriations or the armed service committees, to help support companies like we have here today.
And Tracy, another conversation through defense, through autos, through technology, everything is this, and that is the talent chase and getting more young people and companies in the mix here. So as somebody, if someone's watching, let's say it's an auto company, let's say it's a supplier, let's say it's a technology, and this technology, what advice would you get them about trying to make the leap?
Try to make the leap. I think the most important thing to do first, and I can't foot stomp this enough, is to engage in forums like GVSETS and like the Michigan Defense Expo. That is a really good starting place. You get to talk directly with those Army customers, hear their challenges, hear their pain points, have constructive dialogues about teaming together on solutions that will support warfighters. They broadcast all of their priorities, so it's really easy for companies that are coming into the industry to understand how they fit into that ecosystem and what they might want to innovate and bring to the warfighter. I think lastly, the most important thing is to help build relationships with companies like ours and all of our partners in the defense industrial base. We all support each other. Neither one of us or none of us can each deliver every single thing possible, so we have to team together to solve those toughest challenges.
And Eric, last question for you here, and that being this: with so much going on here and so much competition with other states for all of this, your event, which had over 3,000 people here coming in from all over the globe to be part of all this and network and all that, it has been a place, too, where deals have been cut between companies and military, Army, what have you. And this past week's event, was there any kind of things like that reach? Anything to...
So this past week's event, I'm sure there will be a number of deals that come out of that. I think the biggest thing that I would say is going back to last year's event, there was a $1 billion acquisition announced at GVSETS in 2024 of a Michigan company. So it's a place to make deals, to connect with the right decision makers and get things done.
And for young people who may be watching, or their parents or their grandparents, if they're interested, is the defense industry, are there great jobs here in Michigan evolving and being built here right now?
Absolutely there are, especially in northern Michigan where I'm from. We're located next to a Michigan R1 Research Institute engineering school, so we have an endless talent pipeline as well as thriving local businesses for them to land in after they graduate.
I would add to that, the defense jobs are great jobs. They pay well, they're highly skilled. We're achieving a mission that was well worth turning up to work for in the morning. And I know all of our companies and many others are expanding. We've added another 100 people in Muskegon in the last year,
wow.
Even since December when I first came on board. So.
Well, I think it's about a $30 billion industry here.
Absolutely.
There we go. Well, that'll have to be the last word. Thank you guys so much for being here. Enjoyed the conversation. We'll be following it because the defense industry is major here. So thanks again for being here. And thanks to you at home for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your day. We'll see you next Sunday for a little bit more Michigan Matters.